Hello and welcome to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today we'll be talking about why Stan Lee sucks. Nowadays, Stan Lee doesn't even really need much of an introduction. He's that old guy that's in all of the Marvel movies. But if you don't know who he is, he's one of the original writers from Marvel. Well then, if he's such an iconic character in the comic book world, how could he possibly suck? Let me list the reasons. He takes credit for basically creating all of Marvel, but he did a lot less than you might think. But come on, Captain America's my favorite superhero. He had nothing to do with creating him. Well, he created X-Men. I love Wolverine. He actually didn't have anything to do with the creation of Wolverine. Okay, well I know for a fact that he created Spider-Man. Well, kind of. He co-created Spider-Man. He was helped by a writer and artist named Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko messed around with a lot of different styles and looks before he finally settled on the one that we know and love. Steve Ditko decided that he should be able to walk on walls. Steve Ditko decided that he had a web shooter. Steve Ditko designed the Spider-Man suit. So what did Stan Lee actually do? Well, he came up with the name. That's creative. And he helped write the characters and the story arcs. And honestly, that's all he ever did with any characters. He never designed any of them. That wasn't his job. He kind of just came up with vague ideas of names and said, here you go, make up something for this. And he had several different talented artists that he would give vague ideas to, and they would design the characters for him. Imagine if somebody came up to you and said, hey, I've got a great idea for a superhero. You'd go, okay, tell me about him. And his response would be, his name's The Thing. Isn't that great? And also, Stan Lee came up with the name Ant-Man. Spider-Man, Ant-Man, he's not creative, it's just the same thing, and he'd keep going to the artist and go, come up with a character for this name or for this trait. And they would go with it, and they would make the character unique and different. If somebody came up to you and said, show me Spider-Man, okay, I'm gonna draw a Spider-Man. Okay, now show me an Ant-Man. You'd be like, how do I make that different? He never really created any of these characters, he just said, here you go, here's a prompt, now go with it. And I guess if you want to say that he's responsible for that, awesome. And also the fact that he's the executive producer of Marvel, which basically got to decide what went out and what didn't, but to claim himself as a creator of all of these Marvel characters is ludicrous. He claims involvement with superheroes he never had anything to do with, and he claims way more involvement with the characters that he helped create than he actually had. The only characters I'm comfortable with giving him full credit for is a Fantastic Four. And those are great characters. And even with that, he goes overboard with how involved he was with that. He writes himself into half the comic strips as the mailman character. He's been brutally honest that he's his own #1 fan. He doesn't really care about the other writers. He takes complete credit because he thinks he's that amazing. He thinks that he is what is important. He thinks he's the face of Marvel. Look at me, I'm so important, aren't I great? When in reality, he had barely anything to do with it. He's the executive producer. He just sat at a table with some writers, threw out a couple ideas, let them do the work, and then said yes, no, to which ideas were thrown at him. That's all he did. So where are the other guys, you might ask? Well, they're either dead or don't care. Stan Lee is the only one so full of himself that he has to be the face of the comics. The whole original point behind putting masks on superhero characters was so that any little kid could say, that could be me. So by putting your face at the forefront is defeating the whole purpose and making it all about you instead of the comic book characters or the kids reading them. I read on his Wikipedia page that he's basically credited for making the anti-hero. Yeah, okay, ever heard of Batman, the second superhero ever created? Stan Lee, you're not as creative as you think you are. If you love the characters, great, but give credit to the people who actually created them. Like Steve Ditko, like Len Wein, like Rob Liefeld, like Jack Kirby. So yeah, you can stop worshipping this guy, and you can stop being so full of yourself, Stan Lee. I'm Simon from Simon's Rants, and that was my rant for today.